First, I'll start with the Fablemans. And I don't drink, so that's Linda. She has an alcohol problem. Okay. So I can talk a lot while I wait on the computer because I have a Dell, which is Microsoft. And I'll try not to go too long because I have to also get into Escape from Maine if I have to use my other glasses. Well, David Lynch stopped his vlog on December 16th of 2022. I met David Lynch, by the way. Please, let's try not to talk. And when I talked to him about script writing, well, improv is what I talked to him about. Please, hang on, just give me a second. Go up. Can you go out on the patio for a second, please? And not talk over all this? Or I'll have to stop it? Okay. Come here. This is my cat. My cat, Edmund. Okay. Say hi, Edmund. She may be talking throughout the little critique. I liked it. Best picture, probably. I thought it ended a little too soon. The rumor I always like to hear, or the story I like to hear. Stop it, kitty. Okay, she's going to talk over me. Give me one moment. There's a destructive aspect of the woman. There's the creation and there's the destroyer. So
hello, I'm the destroyer. Welcome to the Please Subscribe show. Hi. Grandma says hi.
Okay, let me finish because I'm trying to continue this.
Okay, I have to grab something and then I'll go and do my own stuff.
I seriously don't drink. I drink like soda and water.
Well, good for you. Maybe you should drink.
No, I do not.
No, I'm tired.
It's not of my persuasion. This is the next scene that I'll be working on. Okay, Fablemans, and I'm immediately talking about Lynch. There's a Brechtian aspect to, I think, Fableman. If you know who Bertolt Brecht is, the director, the great theater director. Two aspects of it that I thought was when he said, you know, would you like to meet the greatest film director of all time? Spielberg was talking about John Ford, who was obviously played by David Lynch, who possibly may be the greatest director of all time, along with Fellini. Spielberg, you know, let's be honest, he makes you feel a warm feeling inside. He takes you to these warm areas, and he brings in a lot of aspects of his character in movie making and his personality. I guess I'll say personality. So he's auteur, especially with lighting. So obviously people could argue, yes, Spielberg, of course, is the greatest of all time. And then people would also argue that David Lynch may be the greatest. And then people would argue that maybe Martin Scorsese is the greatest director of all time. And then people would argue, well, maybe Francis Ford Coppola is the greatest. And it'll just, there'll be all these frames of schools of thought. I'm a fond believer that, obviously David Lynch has done things that they didn't do. Okay, I'll just put it that way. Or David Lynch has done things that they can't do. So when he tells the young kid, and I have to pull up some things, when he tells him, would you like to meet the greatest director? That's obviously an homage to David Lynch. So that's when I mentioned Bertolt Brecht, an aspect that I think he's wanting the audience, Spielberg is wanting the audience to know that it is a movie. And he also brings in the whole 8mm where we're watching a movie inside of a movie. So we're kind of aware throughout, when we watch it, we're aware that the movie is about Steven Spielberg's life. I was aware of that as I was watching it. But yet, we're also aware that it's kind of a fable too. So there's probably aspects to it that makes it not exactly true, which is okay. And I think Lynch would like that, because you have to, with me as a scriptwriter, and Kitty's going to make noise, I know probably Lynch doesn't like a lot of this vlog and watching movies on phones and how the phone has become kind of like like there's a difference between cinema and real life, and he didn't go to that degree. So he kept the cinema aspect to his movie about his life. I'm looking at it right here. So Tony Kushner was behind this, who wrote Angels in America. So there's probably an Americano or an American aspect to the film, he's maybe making a comment about America, just like Tony Kushner kind of has in Angels in America, and then other things that I'm not an expert on Tony Kushner, or Kushner, sorry, Tony Kushner. But I think he may be saying some stuff about America in many different ways. For example, he does mention IBM, which IBM's not necessarily America. So Michelle Williams' performance, and I've seen photos of Spielberg's mom. I think that was probably a pretty good casting choice. I think so. To be honest, I mean, personally, I'll be critical. I like the fact that his mom was kind of, I don't want to insult Spielberg, but she was kind of brainy. So she was kind of, I'm not going to say dorky, because there's beauty quality in all smart people. But the Fablemans, we were dealing with an intelligent family. So a family that did things through intelligence. They were engineers, you know. You think of the play by Moss, You Can't Take It With You. So you have the mother playing the piano and the father creating the computer, possibly for IBM. So there's the aspect of a talented family and a gifted family. And so he was coming from an aspect of life that maybe many people have not come from. And he had to reach out to America or to the world and try to share this unique family that he lived in. That was his family. And he had to try to meet you in the middle ground. So I don't think he was completely true, or we'd be watching something that was a long series that went on for 8 hours and stuff. So he had to condense everything into 2 hours and yet still keep this eccentric aspect of where his family came from, the Jewishness of it, and yet still try to connect with the Christianity or even the America side of things. It wasn't set in Israel, it was set in America. And it was also set after the war. I think the greatest thing about this movie is the beginning, because we're introduced to a character that's representing Steven Spielberg, who is Sammy Fableman, played by Gabriel LaBelle, which I thought was a great performance, a sincere performance, a dedicated thing. So we see this young, like, prophet character, you know, this ability to change the minds of America, which Spielberg did. I mean, Close Encounters, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's affecting the way children think. When I was young, we went out and bought bullwhips after we saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we're standing out on, you know, our lawn or on the side lawn of my father's house, and we're cracking these bullwhips, okay? Probably this major joke that went all the way across America. You could buy these bullwhips at Six Flags over Texas, and you could pretend like you were Indiana Jones. So it affected the way that we think. And not everyone has the power to do that, or not everyone has the power to be that powerful to affect the way that you go out in the backyard and play, okay? We were not playing Eraserhead, okay? We didn't go out and play Eraserhead dolls. I mean, whatever kid did, that kid was truly gifted, okay? No kid was that gifted on the planet. We went out and we played Indiana Jones, okay? So that's the level of power this filmmaker is presenting. It's almost like a prophetic or prophet-like character, okay? So it hits you hard. But what Spielberg's good at doing is entertaining. So all of a sudden, we're being told this story, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this uncle comes. But he also, I think there is some Lynchian quality to it. So he's making an homage to Lynch. When the phone call happens, and is it Mitzi Fableman answers the phone, and you can hear the weird kind of Lynchian sound, and then someone telling her not to open the door, which is her mother, which is the grandma that had already passed over. So there's an aspect of the afterlife coming back in, which he has a little bit in Raiders of the Lost Ark, mentioned the spiritual connection of the afterlife. So the uncle comes, and it's Judd Hirsch, who I thought was brilliantly cast. Nothing changing on his performance. He nailed it. It was nearly a cameo, and he'll be receiving an Oscar for it, I'm pretty sure. Hopefully, he's nominated. Seth Rogen, it was surprisingly Benny Lowy. It was kind of a villainous character, because that's part of the adultery that he's capturing and the kids capturing. I think the casting was brilliant. Even some of the kids in it, or the teenagers, if I can find any of them, There was Chad Thomas, who was kind of like this River Phoenix style kind of character, played by, I believe that's Oaks Figley, or Fegley. And there was a great performance by Sam Reckner, who played Logan Hall, who is kind of this Crispin Glover. But yet, what I liked about, and I'm trying to sum this up as quickly as possible, what I liked about the movie is that he becomes friends with his enemy. And he does this through filmmaking. Because filmmaking puts everyone in the same room, and it says, well, I'm real because I'm showing you that you're real, and I'm giving you the ability to look at it. You know, I'm a real person, and you're a real person, and we can be real together. And my favorite part of the movie, one of the favorite parts, is when the bully that was beating him up because he was Jewish, and they put the bagel in there and the Jew hole thing, and they punch him in the nose for being honest or whatever about who he was, or about who he is, or whatever. I don't want to get into politics, but he befriends him. So rather than keep this enemy, he befriends this enemy. And this guy, Logan Hall, this character played by Sam Reckner, which is a great performance, befriends him and cites, wow, you know, why would you be so kind? And so there's an aspect of forgiveness and kindness and using kindness. Because after all, you know, when I do all these vlogs, I've done 1,600, these are all free gifts. And Spielberg probably worked his way up into Hollywood by giving free gifts. And one thing I wanted to go and talk about towards the end is, people don't realize that Spielberg ran into Marlon Brando while he was editing a Tahiti documentary. And supposedly Brando was in his shorts. I don't know if it's rumor, or Brando was like in his bathrobe or something. Like, what are you doing in here, kid? And it was, you know, Spielberg running in, you know. And so there's a whole aspect of the Christian and the Jew, you know, in the film. So it's a character that we don't see. It's an unseen hand. That there is a Christian that can believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. He died for my sins. He died for our sins. And it becomes kind of a immediate wall, you know, in real life or in what's known as Hollywood. It has been. Pureflix is out. Come here, kitty. All right, we're going to fight over there. Okay. Sorry, kitty wants to get involved. So it becomes a wall, but we have Pureflix, you know. So the church has its own little entertainment system, or it can watch this movie or another movie, because it says GD in it maybe 10 times, on what's called VidAngel. So they can watch it and go, okay, we can be rid of the sin of the world. And I think what maybe Spielberg does is he doesn't really rid that out. So we see that, and the Christian sees it and is tempted by it, and then it has to ask forgiveness, like, Lord, why did I watch that, you know? I didn't really do that with Schindler's List. When I watched Schindler's List, I didn't go, oh God, why did you let me see that? Because what I was watching was horrible sin of the Holocaust of these people that were trying to be eliminated from the planet. You know, Hitler was trying to eliminate all people that were of that nation, of Israel, from the planet. It didn't work. So he had to back off and go somewhere else. But it still remained in our country. And it still remains, even today. There's people that hate people from Israel or the Hebrew nation because they feel like they have to. And here's one thing about Christianity is you don't have to hate anyone. You're not supposed to hate anyone. And then I said earlier, I know, kitty, stop it. I said earlier that Christianity is a sect. Well, if you go back 2,000 years, you'll find that Jesus Christ was Jewish. And so all the things that happened, and the Romans were actually ones that stapled him to the cross and made sure that God's will was done. So you can obviously tell that I'm a Christian. Yes, I am. But what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't mean, kitty, stop it. It doesn't mean that you're wrong for being truthful, okay? On both ends, okay? So we see this thing as worldly. I'm gonna have to stop for a minute because the cat is very cruel at times, and very masculine. And we see this thing as worldly, and really it's not. Judaism is part of Christianity. I've been taught this, you know, from the Messianic Jews. Okay, kitty. Okay, he doesn't want me talking about it. The cat's becoming. Move this way, right here. All right. The cat will get his way. been taught this about that there's a group, a sect. So I'm trying to write about a little bit. I'm trying to tone it down because I don't want to get too. When I was watching it, I was afraid that this was going to be kind of like Home for Purim or Home for Thanksgiving, one way or another. And you have to tone it down a little bit, but he didn't completely. He stuck to his roots. You know, his family sang songs like that. Just like, I guess, during Christmas time, we sing secular or Christian songs, and the more Christian you are, the more strange it gets. I don't think it went that way. I didn't feel like I was watching like Home for Purim, if you know the Christopher Guest kind of side joke. You know, I didn't think I was watching that, so I could still watch a human being that I could, you know, identify with, and say, wow, you know, that person must have went through a whole lot. These people in the school wanted to beat him up because he was this thing, you know. And I go back and I think in my high school how, you know, we at least tried not to, but there was anti-Semitism in a certain way, and jokes and snide remarks, and maybe where it could even get physical. I didn't see a lot of it, but it probably does happen. To a certain extent. So that's an awareness of the movie. So there's many different folds on why it's good. I have to say that I probably think it would probably win Best Picture. We don't know yet. We'll find out tonight. It's starting pretty soon. Now I have to be honest, I did not see any of the other movies. I have not had time. This is a time when I go to Redbox and I usually watch what I think are going to be the best or top 10 best movies, you know, or the best screenplays, or the best sound editing, or the best acting. And I'm pretty sure from just seeing it and being kind of a fan over the years that probably, you know, Darren Aronofsky's The Well is going to get for Best Actor, which is going to go to Brendan Fraser. You know, I hope that Judd Hirsch wins. I've been a fan of Judd Hirsch ever since I saw him in a great film called Running on Empty, which is with River Phoenix, who's one of our most endeared actors and one of our seriously most talented actors, just as James Dean would have been, you know. Imagine James Dean making movies today. Well, I don't think he would probably be able to. He'd probably be passed away, just like Marlon Brando's passed away, and we all eventually pass away. But I thought it was a little unfair that Paul Dano, you know, didn't get the nomination. It was underplayed, but I thought it tugged on my heart. Now, one last thing I'll say about Fablemans is that I did tear up in it 2 times, and then I cried once. Because you go through all the stress in life, and you find a connection with a film, and then you start to cry. And I think that can be with it can be with music. It can be with music. It can be with watching a dance. It can be in painting. You know, going and seeing a painting that may make you cry, but you have a connection with it. You see a familiarity. I've had Jewish friends that have given me gifts, you know, and there's gift giving in it. And I think the camera that's given to him, the 8mm or 16mm or whatever, the camera was given to him. So it was given to him. He had the opportunity to go in that direction. The young kid, who is Sammy Fableman, took that opportunity to go in that direction, and then we see at the end who he represented. So it's a great story. It's a hurrah. I could easily see people saying that maybe there's some sappiness and that it's a little too rich, but I think that was Spielberg probably maybe not lying. You know, he came from a tremendously intelligent, gifted family that probably wanted him to go off and give this thing a shot. And it worked for him, and that's a good thing. And for any vlogger that's out there today, or anybody that's out there in any level, it's working for you. Believe me, it's going to work for you, because we've made it available too. There's a difference between, like I say, cinema, someone that's given $200 million to make this project, and then someone who's not given that. But there's greatness on both levels, okay? There's the little guy who's great, and then there's the guy who's given all the money to do what he needs to do. Because if you're going to do a big war sequence, and there's not really necessarily war in it, but there's pretend war in the Fablemans. But if you are going to, you have to pay the actors to take that chance to jump out of that plane with that parachute just in case that it doesn't open, or just in case something goes wrong with the gun or something happens, they usually want a little bit of money to take those risks. Or you just pay the normal guy a certain amount of money to give up and sacrifice his life for all those hours. They have to get paid because it's absolute suicide to do it without any money, which I've tried many times and will probably continue to. So anyway, music, pretty good. I'm a big stickler about music. And that's when the sappiness can come in, when there's too much music. But I thought it was cool that Spielberg stuck to like his old style 1950s beach. There was some beach music in there, you know, but it wasn't like big time rock and roll hits, you know. It wasn't Hal Ashby. So he stuck to this kind of toning that down. I think it worked. I've heard a critic say that it didn't. So I say that it does. It does work, and it's entertaining. And I watched it through and through. I don't watch a lot of movies. It's like almost 3 hours long. So I don't want to go on and on and on and just, you know, all this brown nose just coming on. But I imagine, you know, when I met David Lynch, and I said, Mr. Lynch, I think is what I called him. I said, when you're making a movie, how much of it is improv? You know, and we were talking about Inland Empire, and the rumor is all of it was improv. But that's not how he responded. He said, well, Cole, he said, everything is scripted, right? So in a way, even if you're going with the improv route, it's going to still be scripted. And then if you script everything, it'll still be scripted. Because life, in a way, there is a script aspect to it. So I think, you know, meeting him had a big effect on the fact that the young character, Sammy, meets John Ford. I just wish he would have thrown that Marlon Brando scene in there. You know, maybe in a director's cut or something. But that was probably the next thing that he was going to do. You know, Sammy's next thing was to run into Marlon Brando in his bathrobe editing a Tahiti movie. You know. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I think it's a lot of fun. It's good. It's emotional. John Hirsch is one of his greatest performances. Not better than Running on Empty, but dang good. As a character work, though, it's better than Running on Empty. As character work, it's absolutely brilliant, and it's needed for the funniness, you know, for the humor that we needed. And he only took us there for a moment. I wish there was more of that character, and I'm sure that Spielberg hears that Uncle Boris, because it was like bringing in, like, I don't know, like almost like a moment of Chekhov or something. It was like bringing in a moment of literature, another world, you know, that we haven't heard. You know, there was a literature aspect to the movie, bringing in that character that I was like listening to something that I've never heard before or never read before, that concreted the movie and made it more powerful. So I'm glad that he didn't forget about those specific little characters. Important film. It's going to go down in his history as a great one. And then maybe later on I can give you some other reviews of other stuff that we come across later on if I have time to watch it. But I'm still working on my own, which is Escape from Maine, which is a personal piece of mine. All right? And you'll have a good night. Enjoy the Oscars.